am far more annoyed about that draw against Burnley than I thought I would be. I'm sure I'm not the only one. But you know what? It's a draw. There was some drama at the end. We fought back. Yeah, I know. I get it. I absolutely do. But I'm annoyed about that, as I think they are, well, they probably are the worst team in the league. I know mathematically they might have climbed off the bottom or whatever the case may be. But they gave us a bloody nose, even though we clawed back and it was exciting and all that sort of stuff. They gave us a bloody nose. They didn't quite land a knockout blow, but they almost did. And what I'm really annoyed about is stuff that really I noticed in the first half, which I didn't feel was fully rectified in the second half. And that is, I've got to say, the surrender of the midfield area. It's this, David Moyes has sacrificed midfield. I don't just mean against Burnley. I think he's sacrificed midfield in this West Ham team. Just cast your mind back to last season when he was sort of... Do you remember David Moyes was trying to do things a little bit differently? He was trying a different style of football, wasn't he? So obviously we had Declan Rice in there, and he was a lot of time... Do you remember Lucas Paquetá went away and he played a couple of games for Brazil, and it was like Moyes had an epiphany. It was part of his plan to play this more expensive game. And he basically noticed that Paquetá was playing as a number 8 for Brazil. So he started trying to do it. And there was a time last season when we would sort of be able to control midfield. There'd be times when, particularly in Europe, Flynn Downs would come in and he'd have a few good games. But there was options there. If Tomas Soucek was having one of his times, there was, you know, a little bit of a period last season where Soucek made 8 passes in one game, didn't he? And there was stuff like that. The whole midfield, you didn't feel had broken down. Now, obviously, a lot of that was propped up and a lot of that was supported by Declan Rice's sort of outstanding performances. But it was a big part of West Ham's game. Midfield was a big part of stuff. Yet somehow, he seems to have surrendered it. And it's happening on a constant basis. And let me just tell you what I mean. Not only are the forwards isolated, and if we can, for the purposes of this video, just whatever, forget the precise positions, but let's just call, not Lucas Paquetá, let's call Jarrod Bowen and Mohamed Kudus forwards. They are isolated. That's no news to anyone, but I think it's the way they're isolated. Because when they're not isolated, the support they're getting is from the fullbacks. When they were at their best during the game against Burnley, it was on the odd occasion that Soufal was able to get forward. So basically, our forwards have to either get into shooting positions themselves and do the stuff themselves, and basically make little solo runs and or supply each other, or they're going to need it to happen from the wing-backs, the full-backs. The actual midfield is rarely functioning to a point where they will get any sort of supply going. And this was really shown, I felt, in the first half against Burnley. The way Kalvin Phillips was giving the ball away was shocking. Now, what I'm not going to do is blame everything on Kalvin Phillips, because most of the time he's not in our midfield. But what he was symbolic of what goes on in our midfield. For the pretty much, I'm not suggesting you go back and watch that game against Burnley, but for pretty much the whole of that first half, there was a massive inability of James Ward-Prowse and Kalvin Phillips and Tomas Soucek to do anything that would remotely link up the play. Now, Soucek has come in for less criticism from me for that Burnley game because he didn't do nothing in the midfield. He actually got back and he won a number of good tackles. But actually, in terms of passing and getting it to our more creative players, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. And I don't know, I'm looking at what's happening with Ward-Prowse. And I've certainly felt within that game there were points where the crowd were getting restless with Ward-Prowse. And there was a point where he got played down the left wing. And certainly watching it on telly, Tony Gale was doing a commentary, and Tony Gale was saying, Ward-Prowse should have been onto that a little bit more quickly. And he was absolutely right, of course. But I just thought, what's he doing there out of position like that? If we're relying him to... What we were relying on in that particular bit was for him to sprint to the byline and cross the ball over quickly with his left foot. Well, number one, he's not left-footed. And number two, he doesn't really have the ability to sprint properly. So it was never going to happen. He honestly does look like a fish out of water when he plays on that left-hand side. And he doesn't look good in the attacking midfield position. If you were to write down the criteria for an attacking midfield, you'd probably say ability to dribble, long shot, vision, pass and move. You'd probably say a lot of stuff. Yeah, some people say and defend James Ward-Prowse in terms of attacking midfield, I say, oh, but look at his pressing and look at the way he works for the team. The point of the matter is, all of the things that he supposedly excels at are not things that you would attribute to an attacking midfielder. So we're losing out and we're missing out massively. We only really start to function when Alvarez is in central midfield, but he can't do it all on his own. Sometimes he tries, but he can't do it all on his own. It's when Alvarez is in central midfield, and then Tomas Soucek, when Lucas Paquetá plays number 10. Then you get something. And I just don't understand how we've allowed ourselves to get back into this sort of position where this midfield just doesn't function. We must be really easy to read. We must be really easy to combat. If you are a strategist and you're a tactician of the opposition, and you must be going back. Not that I even think you'd particularly need to scout West Ham. I just think the manager needs to look at West Ham just in the game, get a video of the game and look at it and think, okay, well, I can control that area. Because if the fullbacks are not overlapping, they're not doing anything, then probably they're not going to get a supply line. What we're relying on is Bowen dribbling past a load of people, Kudus dribbling past a load of people. And the tactic is so... It's just a Jurassic tactic. It really is like a medieval tactic of we're going to start the game with Paquetá on the left, and it will get to a point where it's not working. There's only one reason for him to be on that left, as far as I can see, and that is that he links up well with Emerson. When Emerson's not there, there's no reason anyway. And I'm not even sure that that's reason enough to take him away from the middle. And then what happens is it doesn't work, then he gets moved to the middle to try and open things up because West Ham get desperate. And then what happens? Ward-Prowse gets put over to that left wing. Now, Ward-Prowse wasn't even suited to the middle anyway. But now he gets moved up. I'm talking the middle, attacking midfield. Then he gets moved over to the left wing. It's awful. I mean, it's awful. It just looks horrendous. I thought, and I used to say this, didn't I? I used to hate watching Fornals on the left wing. I used to hate it because he couldn't do it. I used to say, come on, he hasn't got a trick and he hasn't got pace. And he's not left-footed, whatever. It just didn't work. And it was, I mean, ironically, look at Burnley. The last goal that we scored was actually good work from Kudus, who I don't think is the best left winger. I'd prefer him the other side. But at least he had a bit of pace. He had pace, strength and trickery and was able to get the ball. The ball went to Danny Ings. Danny Ings scored. What is Ward-Prowse meant to do? I actually have a level of sympathy for him, actually. Look, that David Moyes constantly puts these square pegs in round holes and they don't work out. And I'm getting very, very concerned, actually. I say concerned. I am getting a little bit concerned that it doesn't get addressed. I don't know how he's... I understand that Flynn Downs wasn't maybe the best player in the world for West Ham. But did you see how bad Ward-Prowse was? And how bad Phillips was? And one thing... Not one thing, he could do more than one thing, but one thing that Flynn Downs could do was he could pass well from A to B. We couldn't even do that. He retained the ball well. He got some of the best passing stats that you could get. Very, very comfortable in possession. I think he's just surrendered it. It's almost like he's just got a team full of stoppers, and that's what he has. When he puts that, and when he has Phillips, and he has Alvarez, he had Phillips, he had Soucek, and he had Ward-Prowse in the middle to start the game. He surrendered midfield. There is not a single playmaker. There's not a single person who can put their foot on the ball. And the commentator was making a point about Josh Cullen. Josh Cullen is better on the ball than all three of those players. The player we let go is better on the ball than all those. I'm not suggesting Josh Cullen be commanding a place in our midfield at the moment. I don't think he would. But he can't even find one place for a playmaker. It was a couple of years ago, used to say it about Leicester. I used to really like the combination of Leicester's midfield. I used to say it before we play them all the time. I used to say I like the combination of Ndidi as the stopper, as Tielemans as the long-range passer, as the playmaker, and you had Maddison there as the dribbler. I thought as a three, they complemented each other perfectly. They had all bases covered. It's doing my nuts in, actually. It really is the way he's surrendering this midfield in the way that he is. And I find it very, very difficult to think that it's going to succeed for any level of time. Anyway, there you go. Just my sort of residual frustration following the game. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.